It started with 6 words. Can you pretend to be my boyfriend? Lena's voice trembled as she said it, her grocery bag slipping from her hands, apples rolling across the wet pavement. Her heart was racing not from love, but from fear. Because standing just a few steps away was the one man she hoped never to see again, her ex, Ben Harper, the man who broke her confidence piece by piece, until even her reflection felt like a stranger. And there, by the curb, bent over a car engine with grease-stained hands and calm, steady eyes, was her only escape, a stranger who looked like he could fix more than just engines. Evan Cole. He straightened, studied her for a second, and without hesitation said softly, "Sure, but you might regret it." In that instant, Lena didn't know that the man she'd just pulled into her chaos wasn't who he seemed. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was a millionaire CEO working undercover to understand how it felt to live without power, without privilege, without people pretending to love you for your money. But to Lena, he was just someone kind enough to stand beside her when no one else did. Lena Brooks was the kind of woman the world often overlooked. 26, exhausted, still smiling through struggle. She worked double shifts at a diner that paid barely enough to keep the lights on. Every night she told her mother on the phone that things were fine. They weren't. She lived in a tiny apartment of a laundry shop. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, but it was home. It was hers. She'd fought too hard to lose it again. Yet here she was, standing in the middle of a crowded farmer's market, pretending to be in love with the man she'd just met, all to prove to her ex that she wasn't broken. And as Evan's arms slipped gently around her shoulders, she felt a strange warmth. He didn't say much, didn't play the role too hard, but something in the way he stood protective, calm, steady, made her heart ache in ways she hadn't expected. Evan Cole, meanwhile, had built an empire from nothing, and yet he'd never felt lonelier. Born into wealth but not love, every handshake in his world came with an agenda. So when he inherited his father's car company, he made a choice: go undercover, live as one of his own employees, and find out who he really was beneath the suits and success. He never expected to meet someone like Lena, someone who didn't know his name, his worth, or his world, and treated him with honesty instead of fear. And so, when he looked at her that day, standing small but fierce, asking a stranger for help with trembling hands, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was pity, maybe it was recognition, or maybe, just maybe, it was the first spark of something real. As Ben finally stormed off, throwing one last cruel remark over his shoulder, Lena let out the breath she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered. Evan shrugged lightly. "Anytime." But his eyes followed her long after she walked away. That simple encounter burned from desperation, set in motion a story neither of them could have predicted. Because kindness, once given, has a way of echoing back louder than expected. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I just want to say something from the heart. Stories like this take hours to craft, but they're created to remind us that good people still exist. If you believe that kindness can change lives, please subscribe and turn on notifications. It means the world to me and helps these stories reach others who might need a little hope today. Now, let's see what happens next. Evan hadn't expected to see her again, but the universe, as it often does, had other plans. 3 days later, Lena walked into the same auto shop, nervous, holding her broken-down car keys like a confession. The old engine had finally given up, and fate had decided to play its quiet little joke. When she saw him again, grease on his hands, soft smile on his face, her cheeks flushed red. "You again?" she asked, half laughing, half embarrassed. Evan looked up from the hood, smirking. "I could say the same thing." The air between them shifted, light, curious, magnetic. He offered her a deal. "Let me fix your car." "No charge." She refused at first. Pride spoke louder than need, but the look in his eyes wasn't pity. It was sincerity. So she nodded, quietly grateful, not realizing that the man fixing her old sedan owned an empire of cars that could have bought her entire street. As days turned into weeks, their paths began crossing too often to be coincidence. A morning coffee here, a ride home there, small moments that stitched themselves into something unspoken. Evan found himself drawn to her laughter the way it cracked through the weight of her struggles. Lena, in turn, began to trust him, bit by bit, like a wound learning to close. But both carried secrets. Hers, shame over her past. His, an entire hidden identity. Then came the charity gala. The night everything began to unravel. Lena had been invited by a regular at the diner, a kind woman who saw something special in her spirit. She borrowed a simple dress, the color of midnight, and told herself she'd just watch from the corner. But when she walked into the glittering ballroom, her heart froze, because standing across the room, in a tuxedo that screamed power and wealth, was Evan. Not in his mechanic's uniform, not covered in grease, but polished, confident, surrounded by the city's elite. Her breath caught. Their eyes met, and in that single, silent second every truth she'd known about him shattered. After the event, she didn't speak to him for days. Calls went unanswered, texts unread, until one night, there was a knock on her apartment door. "Lena," he said softly, his voice thick with regret. "Let me explain." But she was shaking, angry, hurt, betrayed. "You lied to me. Evan, you made me feel safe, when the whole time, you were pretending." "I wasn't pretending," he whispered. "Not with you. I just wanted to know what life felt like when people didn't see my money first. Then you should have trusted me to see you anyway." Silence filled the room. That kind of silence that feels heavier than words. But even in heartbreak, kindness found a way to slip through the cracks. A few days later, Lena learned the truth. Evan had anonymously paid off her late mother's hospital debt, not to impress her, not to buy forgiveness, but because he'd seen how much she'd suffered carrying it alone. That act broke her anger in half. Still, love built on secrets rarely stands steady. When Lena's ex then reappeared with gossip about Evan's real life, she faced a brutal choice: protect Evan's secret and lose her job at the diner, or reveal the truth and ruin the man who had saved her life in more ways than one. It was a test of loyalty and love, and her decision, made in a moment of desperation, would cost them both dearly. Conflict deepens. A leaked video from the gala exposed Evan's identity to the public. The media swarmed the diner, spinning stories about a fake poor mechanic who toyed with a waitress for amusement. Evan was furious, humiliated. He thought Lena had betrayed him. She tried to explain, tears streaming down her face, but he walked away without a word. And just like that, two hearts that had begun to heal cracked wide open again. The kindness that had once brought them together now became a wound they both carried. But beneath the pain, something deeper still lived, something that hadn't yet died. Because sometimes, love isn't about how perfect the truth is, it's about how far you'll go to make things right when it's broken. For weeks, Lena lived in silence. The diner felt emptier, the city colder. Every sound of a passing engine made her chest tighten. She couldn't escape the ghost of Evan's face the night he left. People whispered. Some pitied her. Others mocked her. But through it all, she kept showing up, serving coffee with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Until one rainy evening, fate came knocking again. Literally. A crash of thunder echoed outside as she closed up the diner. She turned, and there he was, Evan, soaked to the bone, exhausted. Human. He wasn't wearing the perfect billionaire mask this time. Just a man, eyes red, heart open. "Lena," he began, voice trembling, "you once asked me to pretend to be your boyfriend for a day. But I haven't stopped pretending since, because somewhere along the way, it stopped being an act." She froze. Tears welled before she could stop them. "Why are you here, Evan?" "To make things right," he said. "To apologize for lying, for hiding, for walking away when you needed me most." He stepped closer. The air between them pulsed with everything unsaid. "I built my empire on deals and contracts," he continued. "But you taught me something I never learned from success. That kindness isn't charity. It's courage. You showed me that." Lena's lips quivered. "You paid my mother's debt, Evan. You didn't owe me that." "I did," he said softly. "Because no one should fight alone. Not you. Not anyone." She took a deep breath, searching his eyes for the truth she once saw there. And this time it was still there, unmasked. "I didn't leak the story," she whispered. "Ben found out. He sold it to the tabloids." "I know," Evan replied. "I found out yesterday." Silence again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was healing. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something, a small pendant, a silver charm shaped like a car gear. "It's from my first workshop," he said with a shy smile. "Before the money. Before everything. I kept it as a reminder of who I was. I want you to have it." Lena's fingers trembled as she took it. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you saw me," he replied. "Not the CEO, not the mechanic. Just me." In that fragile moment, something shifted. The rain outside softened, the neon sign flickered, and the world felt still, like it was holding its breath. Lena took one step closer, then another, and for the first time in months, she smiled. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "we stop pretending. No more secrets." Evan nodded, relief flooding his face. No more secrets. They stood there, drenched in rain and forgiveness, letting the storm wash away everything that had come before. Later that week, Evan did something no one expected. He showed up at the dinner not to hide, but to serve. For an entire day, the billionaire CEO wore an apron, pouring coffee and washing dishes beside the woman who'd changed his life. Reporters came. Cameras flashed, but for once, Evan didn't care about the headlines. He wasn't there for show. He was there for her. And when he looked across the counter and saw Lena laughing again, really laughing, knew the pretense was gone. This was real. That day, two very different worlds finally collided. Not in scandal or heartbreak, but in something far rarer, redemption born from kindness. Because sometimes, the smallest act, pretending to be someone's boyfriend for a day, can open the door to a love that no amount of wealth could ever buy. 6 months later, the diner buzzed with life again. New paint on the walls, laughter echoing from corner to corner, and a new name gleaming above the door: Second Chances Cafe. Lena stood behind the counter, apron tied neatly, serving coffee to a group of young mechanics from Evan's Workshop Initiative, a program he'd started to train and employ underprivileged youth. The same man who once hid his fortune behind grease-stained hands now used that fortune to lift others who reminded him of his past. And Lena, she wasn't the frightened woman begging for help anymore. She was the heart of this new chapter, managing the cafe, running charity drives, mentoring single mothers, and, most of all, smiling again. The world had changed for both of them. But it wasn't money that did it. It was kindness disguised as a simple favor. One evening, as the cafe closed, Evan walked in holding two steaming cups of cocoa. He'd been working at the garage nearby again by choice, not necessity. He placed one cup in front of her. "You know," he said, grinning, "you still owe me for that pretend date." Lena chuckled. "Oh really? What's the bill?" Evan leaned closer. "A lifetime of real ones." They laughed, not the nervous laughter of strangers, but the warm kind that comes from knowing you've both survived the storm. Outside, the same neon sign flickered, the same place where their story began. Only now, instead of fear and desperation, there was light. Because one desperate whisper, "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a day?" had become the spark that healed to broken souls. And now, together, they lived by a shared belief that one act of compassion, no matter how small, can rewrite a lifetime of pain. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us, even in the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover stories that restore faith in humanity. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that prove love and compassion can change everything. And before you go, take a moment to ask yourself, what act of kindness could you offer today? Because somewhere out there, someone might just be waiting for you to say, "Don't worry, I'll help." Thank you for watching, and remember, you have the power to change someone's entire world.